Hi there. Okay, so welcome to section 3. So this is the final section of the first key area of cell structure. Once we've done this, that's us covered the whole of that first key area. And it is on fungal and bacterial cells.
Okay, so far we've looked at plant cells and animal cells. We've looked at the different organelles in them and discussed what they look like. This one, we are going to be looking at the different structures found within fungal and bacterial cells and the different functions these structures have. And actually, a lot of them are pretty similar to the first two. We've just got a few more, slightly similar to plant and animal cells. By the end of this video, you should be able to state the different features found in the bacterial cells and the fungal cells. You should be able to state the function of these different organelles that are found in bacterial and fungal cells, and you should be able to describe the difference between plant cell walls and fungal or bacterial cell walls. That's a really important thing that you're going to need to be able to do because that comes up in exams quite a lot.
Okay, so let's have a look at fungal cell structure. Now, fungal cells, this again is just taken from an SQA paper. They have a less regular square kind of shape than plant cells. So this is a first clue as to that this isn't going to be a plant cell here. They have a lot of features in common with a plant cell. So the main thing you're looking for is what kind of shape is it? Is it a more round, blobby shape with maybe that little dip at the top, or is it a complete rectangle? Complete rectangle, probably plant cell. Slightly different rounded shape, gonna probably lean towards fungal cell structure. To be fair, the SQA do tell you quite a lot of the time. They'll say this is a fungal cell, this is a plant cell, and then they will ask you questions about it. So
what's important to note is that yeast is a very common example of a fungal cell. They might say this is a yeast cell and not specify it's a fungal. Yeah. Just knowing yeast is a common example of fungal because that does happen quite a lot.
And they just expect you to know that that's a fungal cell. Okay, so let's have a look at these then. So first of all, we've got our nucleus in the middle. It's exactly the same as other nuclei that we have seen, big round blob in the middle. Then we go into our ribosome. So again, we're looking at the little full stop, the little black dots is what we're focusing on, not the big waggly thing that it is attached onto. Cell wall is annoyingly right behind us, okay? Now, the cell wall is not made of cellulose, okay? That's what that thing says there. Let's hide us. Okay, so the cell wall is not made of cellulose. It's made of other stuff. You don't need to know what stuff it is, but the point is it's got a cell wall helping keep its structure kind of regular and helping defend against water a little bit, as you'll learn in the second key area. The cell membrane is the slightly inner line. Again, that is controlling entry and exit of materials to the cell. Now, some fungal cells can have a vacuole. The vacuole is optional though, so it might appear on your fungal cell diagram, it might not appear on a fungal cell diagram. Again, hopefully the exam paper would tell you this is a fungal cell, this is a plant cell, but they don't always. So again, you're looking for this irregular shape, but if a vacuole's there, it's fine, you just need to be able to identify that's a vacuole. Then we're looking at the mitochondria. Is the same as we've always seen, is wiggly jelly bean type shape. And then finally, this line, you should have guessed it already, is the cytoplasm. Okay, site of chemical reactions. So these are all of the features, I'll just bring us down again. These are all of the features that you can find in a fungal cell. You should be able to find all of them except the vacuole might be optional. Everything else should be there. Okay, so if something else is missing, not great. But everything else is able to be there. Vacuole might be there, might not be there. Okay, this is also a diagram of a fungal cell that I've taken from a different SQA paper. So again, we've got the cell wall running around the outside, cell membrane, nucleus, mitochondria, and vacuole. The ribosomes aren't there, but that's not because they're not there. It's just they haven't doodled them in. Okay, but this tells us again that shape, that rounded shape with the little dip out of it, that's indicating fungal cell.
Okay, so the other thing we're going to look at is bacteria cells, or sometimes called bacterial cells. Doesn't matter if there's an L at the end of it, not. They're meaning the same thing. So bacteria.
You make it sound like bacterial cells.
It's bacterial.
With your accent.
Okay, bacteria cells. These are single-celled organisms, so they're only one cell big. So they are unicellular, and they can be really, really helpful to humans. They can also be really harmful to humans, which is something you might already know. They can be used in a process called genetic engineering, which is something that you're going to look at as one of the topics in this.
Key area 5.
Key area 5, there you go. Because of some special features that they have, some of these organelles that they have are really specific to bacteria, and it actually makes them really, really useful for us as humans. So we're going to look at these functions on these organelles. So this is your standard bacterial cell diagram. these are probably the ones that look the most different. You can see loads of different structures and shapes to bacterial cells, but we'll show you a few examples. Some of the features, again, common with plant and animal cells, but there are some key differences in this one. This is probably the most different of the kind of 4 cell types we look at.
The main way that you tell that this is not a plant cell, okay, is it is missing a few really crucial things, namely the nucleus. It cannot be seen on there. Or if you haven't seen these ringed structures before, maybe you think that they're nuclei, but there's 3 of them, so it's weird. So instantly this tells me this isn't a plant cell because the inside of it is a bit weird.
Okay, so the first thing you'll notice again, ribosomes. We always see ribosomes, little black dots. You know what they are by now, hopefully. Cytoplasm, the background, that site of chemical reactions, it's there in all the cells. We've got a cell wall again, so round the outside, that very outer layer is a cell wall, again, not made of cellulose, only made of cellulose in a plant cell. So in a bacterial cell and a yeast cell, the cell wall is made of other stuff. You don't need to know it in Nat5, you just need to know it's the other stuff, but it's that outside shape, and again, it's giving it that structure to the cell. We'll then get our cell membrane, that second line going in the way, controls entry and exits of substances. It's the same again. Then we get on to the ones that are different. You can see this little black ring. There's 3 of them in this cell. This is called a plasmid, and this is really crucial to that process of genetic engineering, which we'll touch on later. But this actually is where the bacterial cell DNA, or at least some of the bacterial cell's DNA and genetic information is. The other part in this cell, which is a circular chromosome, sometimes it looks like a big circle. It does look a little bit like a vacuole
really
in this
annoying.
diagram. Sometimes it's a bit more kind of loopy and squiggly and looks almost like someone's bad signature. And you can kind of tell it a bit more obviously in that, which I think we might have an example of soon. But the circular chromosome and the plasmid, bacterial cells have these instead of a nucleus. And this is where their genetic information is held. So that's the really, really big differences. No nucleus, but we've got a plasmid and we've got circular chromosomes.
A lot of the reason for this is bacterial cells are minuscule. They are really, really tiny. They are smaller than a nucleus could possibly be. So they can't have a nucleus because they're actually smaller than a nucleus.
Okay, so looking at this in slightly more detail, we're going to look at the circular chromosome first of all. So as we've just said, bacteria don't have a nucleus. They have this circular chromosome. It is just a long, thin loop of DNA again. Looks like a vacuole here annoyingly, but it can be a big kind of continuous squiggle. But the idea is it starts and stops at a point, and it would be a loop if you unfolded it. And this contains all of the instructions for the cell. So where in all our other cell types, the nucleus contains it, the circular chromosome contains it for a bacterial cell. So all that genetic information, it's in that big squiggle in the middle.
So if asked in an exam question, what's the job of the circular chromosome? It's that stuff that's underlined that you'd have to say. It contains even genetic instructions for the cell is fine, but the idea is it contains those instructions for the cell.
Okay, other one, the plasmid that I've just touched on, it's those little rings. They always appear as rings. They always do appear as little circular rings. They are quite consistent in how they appear. But these are just rings of DNA. They can be used in the process of genetic engineering. Again, we're going to touch on that later, but that's their main purpose. Is they are rings of DNA, so they contain some of that bacterial cell DNA in these individual rings, which are plasmids.
Okay, so looking at all the cell structures that we've looked at so far, I'm not going to go through all of them because we've covered them, but what you should do is if you've got a table of structure and functions, you should be adding in circular chromosome because that's new and it contains all the instructions of the cell, and plasmid, it's a ring of DNA. So all of these structures that you can see listed here, they are all of the structures that you need to know about for a National 5. So you need to know where they're found, in what type of cell, and what do they do. Okay, and that information is all interchangeable. So we might have a picture of a cell saying what is the job of part A. So you don't even have to name the part A that's labeled, but you need to be able to say its job. Okay, so all of that information, really, really important that you've got memorized inside your head.
And remember the 4 types of cell: animal, plant, bacterial, yeast or fungal cell, depending on what they call it. They're the ones you need to know. You need to know what of these are in what of those 4 types of cells.
Okay, so this information here, this is quite a useful table to have, and it shows the kind of stuff that you have to have memorized. So say you've got a picture of a cell in front of you in the exam. Instantly you're looking, does it have a nucleus? If the answer is no, that's going to be a bacterial cell that you're dealing with. Has it got plasmids? Can you spot plasmids? Yes, then that's got to be a bacterial cell because nothing else has plasmids. Does it have a cell wall? So does it look like it's got a regular thick shape, or is it kind of blobby and thin around the edges? If it is, then that's going to be an animal cell, because animal cell, only type of cell that doesn't have a cell wall. Has it got chloroplasts? Yes. In that case, it's got to be a plant cell. So these are the kinds of little clues that you're looking out for.
Okay. What is also important to note is things like the cytoplasm, or say things like, there are three things: the cytoplasm, the cell membrane, and the ribosomes. They appear in all three cell types. This is a common question that comes up. It will be name an organelle and give the function of that organelle that appears in all the cell types that we discussed. So you can choose cytoplasm, cell membrane, or ribosome, have at it, but you need to know what they do, their functions, and that they're found in all of them. The nucleus, really tempting answer. A lot of people like to go for nucleus or mitochondria. They are not in bacterial cells, and that's really important to remember. So there are only three things that appear in all four. That might be another thing to put in a flashcard.
Yeah, that would be a good idea. Okay, so we've had a look at the different features found in the fungal and bacterial cells. The new organelles that we have brought in are the circular chromosome and the plasmid, but fungal and bacterial cells do have some of those older structures in common, such as fungal cells have got a nucleus, they've got a cytoplasm, and the difference between plant cell walls and fungal or bacterial cell walls is plant cell walls are made of cellulose, fungal or bacterial cells walls are made of other stuff. Okay, so that is the final key area. Sorry, not the final key area. You wish. That is the final video for the first key area, so cell structure. The next set of videos will be on the second key area, which is transport across cell membrane. So that cell membrane that we were talking about to go into a whole load more detail about it. Enjoy.